In this lesson, I will teach you about different types of nodes in DaVinci Resolve, and we will be using these Blackmagic Raw clips. This is the first clip, and this is the second clip. And these are my project management settings. You can copy them. And here the input color space doesn't matter as these clips are raw, so DaVinci Resolve is able to recognize them automatically. And I am working in DaVinci White Gamut Intermediate. So let's move to the first clip. And the first type of node in Resolve is a serial node. And serial node is the most basic form of node. The shortcut for it is Alt-S or Option-S. And serial nodes work as your basic building blocks for correcting footage and creating looks. And if you are a very beginner, you can actually work using only serial nodes. I always use serial nodes for my primary color correction. So this is where I am adjusting the balance and the exposure. And I have created 3 serial nodes here. So my first one will be my exposure. The second one will be my balance. And the third one will be my contrast. I can also adjust my contrasts separately. So let's start from the exposure. And I will also adjust my waveform here. I will make it more visible. And if you prefer using the white curve, feel free to do it. But I will move to my primary wheels. And here I will increase my gain first. Then I can see that my shadows are pushed down quite a lot, so I will maybe raise them a tiny bit. And then I will decrease my midtones a touch. And this is before and after. Just a tiny adjustment. Then let's move to balance. And I will also change my waveform to the parade, so I can see all of my RGB channels separately. And I can tell that the clip is quite warm as the red channel dominates here. So I'll use my offset wheel and I will push it a bit towards blue to neutralize my clip. Like this. Just a touch, it doesn't need much. And this is before and after. So now the clip looks more neutral. And we can move to the contrast node. And here I will play around with my contrast and my pivot sliders to add more depth to the clip. And this is before and after. Now, another thing is that we can apply nodes on the clip, but also on the timeline level. So here I have my clip selected, which means that when I create a node in this node graph over here, the corrections I make on this node will apply only to the clip I'm currently working on. But sometimes we want to apply the same corrections to all clips on our timeline. And in this case, we can apply the node to the whole timeline. So let's switch the clip here to the timeline. We can also do it by switching between these 2 dots over here. And my node graph is empty, so I will hit Option S to create a new serial node. So I will quickly make some adjustments here just to show you how it works. I will shift the offset, adding a lot of pink hue to it. And now when I move to my other clip, I can see that the same change has been applied here as well. But let's get rid of this node. I will not be using timeline nodes today. I just wanted to show you that this is possible. This way you can, for example, add a vignette to the whole timeline. But now let's move to our first clip, and also let's move to another type of node, which is a parallel node. And we create parallel nodes by hitting Option P. So I will hit Option S first to create a serial node, and then Option P to create a parallel mixer. And parallel nodes are designed for secondary color grading. We can create as many parallel nodes as we need. And in simple terms, parallel nodes are connected with a parallel mixer and they branch out from the same source, creating identical substreams where you can perform independent adjustments. And what's important, they are all equal. So the order of the adjustments doesn't matter. Now, let's move to some practice. So I will use my parallel nodes to adjust some parts of the clips separately. And I don't need that many parallel nodes, so I will just remove most of them, leaving only 2. And let's use these ones to create a look. So I can see that the green hue is very dominant in my shot. So I can manipulate it a bit, and then I will also manipulate the red hue as well. So let's label our parallel nodes as red and green. And let's click on the red node first. And here, in order to isolate red, we could use our qualifier over here by selecting the red hue. And then by using these sliders over here, we could refine the selection. But there's also another way of doing this. So we can also use one of the Resolve's automatic presets. So we can go here to Color, and then Presets. And then here we can choose from 6-vector green, yellow, red, magenta, blue, cyan, or chroma light or dark, depending what we want to select. So let me grab 6-vector red. And now when we turn the highlight mode on here, we can see our selection. And this is an auto tool, so it usually needs some additional adjustments. But it's a very good start. And maybe this is even a faster way of selecting a certain hue than the qualifier. So let me adjust it a bit better. I will only move my hue slider a bit to select more of the red hue. And then I will turn the highlight mode off. And now I will, for example, go to my curves. And look what's happening when I move my curve up and down. Only the selected hue is affected. So I will brighten it a tiny bit. And then I will go back to the primaries. And I will push my gamma towards yellow to introduce some warmth. Like this. And this is before and after. Now let's move to the parallel node labeled as green. And here I will also grab the preset. So this time it will be 6-vector green. And let's turn the highlight mode on. And this time our selection is not that accurate, only that little bit has been selected. So we have to improve it a bit more than previously. So again, I will stretch out my hue slider to grab more of that green hue. I can also play with the softness over here. And now the selection looks way better. So again, I will go to my primaries. And here I can push my gamma wheel towards different directions to get different results. So when I introduce here more yellow, my clips look a bit autumnal. And when I push it towards blue, I'm getting this very cold look. This is before and after. And when I disable all of my parallel nodes, before and after, I can see how much I was able to change the character of my clip only by using parallels and 2 different presets. Now let's move to another type of node, which is a layer node. And we create layer nodes by hitting Option L. So I will hit Option S first to get a serial node, and then Option L to get a layer mixer. So this way, here I have 2 layer nodes, and I will also move them down here. And the difference between the layer mixer and the parallel mixer is that when we use the layer mixer, the node below always takes a priority over the node above. That's why we often use layer nodes to isolate skin tones when we want to create different looks. And this is what I'm going to show you. So I will label my nodes. My node below will be my skin tones, and my node above will be my look. And just to show you how the layer nodes exactly work, let's click on the look node and let's push the offset here towards blue quite a lot. And we can't see any change here yet. And this is because first we have to make a selection on the node below. So when I disable my node below, I can see all the changes I've made. But let's reset it and let's do a proper adjustment using our layer nodes. So first I will click on my skin tones and I will go to my qualifier this time, and then I will select the skin on the clip. Then I will turn my highlight mode on, and now I can see that I have to improve this selection quite a lot. So I will play around with my sliders. Sometimes it takes a little while. Okay, now I will only blur my selection a lot. And I will denoise it. This will work. I have selected not only skin tones, but the wooden item and other elements as well, but they will also benefit from doing this. So let's turn the highlight mode off and let's move to the look node. And here I want to increase that cold look we have just started creating. So I will introduce some of the blue into the shadows using my lift. And maybe in the midtones as well. And this is before and after. And now let's have a look at what would have happened if we haven't isolated the skin tones. So I will disable this node. You see, the skin tones and reds wouldn't look as nice and vibrant as the look would have affected them too much. Okay, now let's move on to our next clip. And here I want to show you one more type of node that's called an outside node. And as you have probably noticed, every node has got not only the green output, but also the blue output, which is the alpha. So we can pass the alpha information like this. So to show you how it works, let's grab a round power window and let's stretch it so it covers almost the whole clip. I will leave only the corners and I will soften my power window. Then I will turn my highlight mode on here and I will make some adjustments inside the power window. So let's go to the white curve over here, and using my white curve, I will just raise my highlights a bit, and then I will decrease the shadows to get some nice contrast. And this is before and after. And now let's right click on our node and let's go to add node, and here, this way we can add another serial node. Then we can pick an option to add a serial node before. Then we can add parallel or layer nodes, but we can also add the outside node over here. So let's select it. And this way we have passed the alpha information from one node to another. And also this alpha information has been inverted. So just to show you, let's turn the highlight mode on over here. And this is exactly the same mask we have created before. The only difference is that it's inverted. So on this outside node, we can also make some changes to the outer part of the power window. So I will turn the highlight mode off. And here I will simply push my white curve down in the midtones to create a vignette. I hope you have learned quite a lot in this lesson. In this lesson, we'll talk about HSL curves, as HSL curves allow for precise and creative color grading. And we'll be working with this Canon clip. These are my project settings, exactly the same as for all other lessons. And my input color space is set to Canon Cinema Gamut Canon Look 2, as this is how this clip was shot. And here on the first node, I have only adjusted the exposure a little bit. This is before and after. Then at the very end, I did a little bit of sharpening. Let me zoom in to show you. This is before and after. And I did it by going to blur and by decreasing the blur radius. So I went from 0.50 to 0.46. And then I have put all HSL curves names separately as parallel nodes, and I will be going through all of them in a second. So let's go to our curves. And here first we have our custom curves that you have familiarized yourself with before. So let's move on to hue versus hue, and let's select our hue versus hue node. And basically, when I drag my curve up and down, I'm able to change the hue of any color of the clip, like this. But we can also do it selectively. So here, if I want to change the hue of the sky, and in order to select only the hue of the sky, I can simply click on it, on the clip, and then a point will appear on my curve, and I can modify it. So I can move it up and down. I will move it up then. So this way, I would change the color of the sky from blue to more of a teal blue, like this. It's a little bit quirky. And this is before and after. So it already changes how our clip looks quite significantly. Then I can, for example, select the green color of the trees over here, and I can do the same. I can change the hue of the trees. We can make them look more green or more yellow, like this. And now let's move on to another node, that is our hue versus saturation. And here we'll be adjusting the saturation of the selected hue. So here let's focus on this red sleeve, as I think it's a bit overly saturated. So we can basically fix it with this curve. So let's select it. And now down here, let's push this point down a bit. And look what happened. This is before and after. A huge difference. Now let's move on to hue versus luminance. And here we can adjust the luminance of the selected hue. So when we move the curve up, the whole clip gets brighter, and when we move it down, it gets darker. So let's select the sky color again to create a point on the curve. And now when I move my point up, the sky gets very bright, and when I move it down, it gets darker. And I will maybe darken it a bit as I prefer it. Now let's move to the luma versus saturation. And here we can increase or decrease the saturation of the shadows, midtones, or highlights separately. So when I push this curve down on the very left, I will desaturate my clips in the shadows, like this. Let's reset it. And when I do it on the right, I will desaturate my clip in the highlights. And here what I will do, I will create an additional point in the midtones, and I will push it up just a touch. Then I will decrease the saturation in the shadows and the highlights a bit. And this is before and after. A very, very tiny difference, but decreasing the saturation in the shadows and highlights make the image look more natural, in my opinion. Now let's move on to the saturation versus saturation. And this curve allows us to decrease or increase the saturation depending on the saturation on the image in the shadows, midtones, and highlights. This is how it works. So here again, I will decrease the saturation of the most saturated parts of the clip in the shadows and highlights, and we can increase them in the midtones. And now let's move on to the last HSL curve called saturation versus luma. And here we can increase or decrease the luminance depending on the saturation of the clip. And it works like this. So I will maybe just decrease it a tiny bit in the highlights, and I will push it up in the midtones. And this is before and after. Again, just a slight difference. Sometimes it's all about very, very subtle changes. And this is our clip before using HSL curves and after. In this lesson, we will be focusing on the Color Warper tool in Resolve, and I will be showing you how it works with this Sony Cine S-Log free clip. So let's find the best frame to work on. And then on my first node, I have already performed the basic color correction. I have just improved the exposure a bit. This is before and after. And I am using the same color management settings as usual. So now let's move straight to our Color Warper. And basically, the difference between the Color Warper and the HSL curves is that the Color Warper allows to adjust the hue and the saturation of the clip at the same time. And as you remember from the previous lesson, when using HSL curves, we have to do it all separately. And then we also have here a chroma luma warper that allows us to change the chroma, that is a purity of the color, and the luminance at the same time. But let's go back to the hue saturation color warper, and let's hit Option S to create a new node, and let's just call it color warper. Then we can, for example, select a certain hue on the clip. So I will select red over here. And then this hue will be highlighted on our color warper, so we can see exactly where our color from the clip is positioned. We can also change the hue and the saturation by simply dragging the mouse over the clip, and also look how our color warper changes when we are doing this. But now let's reset it. And we can also change the size and the position of our color warper, clicking here. And we can place it wherever we want to. Then over here, we can add more rows to our color warper if we want to be more precise, and we can also add more rings to it. I usually pick 12 rows and 6 rings. This is enough for my needs. And then this yellow line over here is a skin indicator. So it tells us where usually skin tones should be placed. Then I will move my mouse somewhere on the clip and it will show me the right point on the grid. Then I'll move it onto the white color. So it will show me that the white is exactly in the middle of the grid, and so on. So take some time to familiarize yourself with it. Then here on the right, we have a bunch of different tools we can use. So this is a simple select and deselect tool. So we can select a certain point with it and we can move it around like this. Then we have a draw selection tool. So let's grab it and let's draw a line over the multiple points we want to select. And then also we can move all of them around to change the saturation by moving it the opposite direction from the center, and to change the hue by moving it left or right, like this. Then we have a pin the pin tool, and we can use it to pin some points on our grid so they don't move. So for example, I will select multiple points around this one. And then I can grab my select tool again, and when I move my selected point around, the points that are pinned will not change the position at all. So we can be more selective with our hue by doing this. Then we have a pull point tool, so let's select it. And when I click multiple times on the center point, for example, all of the other points are moving towards the grid, desaturating the image. And then next to it, we have a push point tool. And when I select it and I click multiple times on the middle point, all of other points on the grid will be pushed away from it, increasing the saturation. So now let's reset it. Then we have increase and decrease fall off points. So when you select some points on the grid, and when you click the plus button, it will add additional points nearby. Or when you click the minus button, that will remove the additional points. Then we have the invert selection tool. So in this case, when we don't have any points selected, when we hit it, it will select them all. Then we have convert selected to pin tool. So when we select a certain point on the grid, and when we hit convert selected to pin, it will convert our selected point to the pin. Then we have select pin column. So when we select a point and we pick this option, it will select the whole column this point belongs to. Then we have select pin ring. So when we select it, it will highlight and select the whole ring that belongs to our point. And then we'll be able to move it around like this. Then we also have select pin all and deselect the pin all. And I think this is self-explanatory. And at the end, we have the reset button. Then we can also use the range slider to select the hue points on the color warper. But let's reset it. And now we can also select a point on our warper, and we can use the hue, saturation and luma slider to shift the chosen color. So as you can see, there's multiple helpful tools to play around with. Now let's go to the chroma and luma grids, and here we have 2 more grids to work with. Now we have selected the grid number 2, so when I click on the hue on my clip and I move my mouse left to right, it will change the hue, adding red or green to it. And then when I change it to grid 1, I can change my hue, adding blue or yellow. And when I move it up and down, I'm changing my luminance, brightening or darkening a certain hue. But now let's reset it and let's go back to the hue saturation color warper. And let's make some subtle changes to the clip, as normally we don't change too much. So here, for example, I want to change this red hue a bit, and I want to take out a bit of the saturation from it. So just on the clip, I will click on the hue I want to modify, and I will move it towards green to make it look more orange, like this. And then I'll also go to the Chroma Luma Color Warper, and here I want to dim a little bit these bright lights. So I will click on it and I will move my mouse down a bit to decrease the luminance. And then with my Hue Saturation Warper, I will add a little bit of blue to the white, as now it has got a bit too much of the warm tint. Okay, and this is before and after. And this is my final result, but you feel free to experiment with the color warper as much as you want to. In this lesson, we will talk about power windows, and I will show you a few common ways of using them. Power windows enable precise and selective color correction and grading within specific areas of the video. This tool allows you to isolate regions in a shot and apply color corrections to those specific areas. It's particularly useful when you want to perform targeted adjustments, such as enhancing the exposure, changing the color, or adjusting the contrast of specific parts of the image. And here on the timeline, I have 3 different clips. The first one was shot in S-Log3, and then my 2 other clips were shot in Canon Log 2. And as I have some mixed clips on the timeline, I am using the same color management settings as I have shown you in the first module of this course. So let's move to the second clip. And here I've just very slightly improved the contrast and the exposure on the primaries node. This is before and after. So let's go ahead and let's create a new node. And let's label it as Power Windows. And now I will use my offset to change the overall tint of the shot, so you can see exactly how the power windows work. Okay, this will do. And now let's go to the power windows over here. And here we have all these different shapes to choose from. So this is a rectangular power window, and we can soften the edges of it manually. But we can also use our controls over here to do so. So we can increase the size of the power window, then we can change the aspect of it, then we can tilt it or pan it, then we can rotate it, and also we can change the opacity, like this. And then we've got our softness controls as well. Then we've got a round power window. Then we've got a polygon that we can modify, like this. We can build any shape we want from it. Then we have a custom shape, so we can create our own shape with it. And then we have a gradient that we can soften like this. Then over here, we can also add multiple shapes. So I'll add a few circles and I will place them over my clip. And now when we click on this button over here, we can reverse it, which means that in this case, everything outside this power window will be affected, not everything inside it. And then we can also disable the power window over here, like this. And then in case we have multiple power windows, we can, for example, reverse one of them, and then we can disable the other. And this way we'll be able to manipulate everything outside our power windows. But now let's just move on to some real-life examples. So first, I will show you how to isolate the sky with power windows and how to improve it, as this is something I come across at work very often, that the sky is a bit overexposed and it looks dull. So in this case, I will grab a custom power window and I will draw a mask around my sky. And now let's turn the highlight mode on so we can see our selection properly. And I will also soften my mask over here. It's always better to soften the mask. And this shot is not a moving shot, but we usually deal with moving shots, so we usually have to track our masks. So let's go to the tracker and let's track it forwards and backwards. Perfect. Now let's go back to the primary wheels, and the first thing I can see is that the sky is quite bright, and that's why it looks quite uninteresting. So let's go to gamma and let's push it down a bit. Okay, and maybe let's push gain down a bit as well. Okay, and my sky automatically looks better. This is before and after. We have added a way more definition to it. And now another thing we can do is to go here to the color warper, and we can use it to increase the saturation of the sky easily. So I can just do it on the whole image with my mouse, like this. And this is before and after. A huge difference. Now let's move to this clip. And here I have also already adjusted the exposure and the balance. And here I want to show you a very simple technique I use very often to bring the attention to the main subject. So let's go ahead and let's create a new node and let's label it as power windows as well. And here I will grab a rectangle power window and I will place it at the bottom of my clip, like this. Then I will soften it and I will turn the highlight mode on to be able to see exactly what I'm doing. This should work. So now let's just turn the highlight mode off. And then here I will decrease the gain a bit, not too much, just to darken the bottom part of the shot. And this is before and after. And look how much attention we have brought to the protagonists with this very simple trick. Now we can also take one step further and we can create the outside node that will basically invert the alpha transparency of the node that precedes it. Therefore, adjustments in an outside node affect the opposite area of the previous node. So let's right click on the power windows node and let's go to add node and then add outside. And when we turn the highlight mode on, we can see that this is exactly the same mask as we have created before, but it's inverted. So now I'll go to my curves. Then I'll create a point in the middle of the curve to be able to manipulate the midtones. And I will push it up just a tiny bit. to add more brightness in the midtones. And this is before adding the power windows and after. Again, a huge difference. Now let's move to this Sony clip. And here I have also already performed some basic adjustments. This is before and after. And here we'll focus more precisely on the face of our model. So let's create a new node. And I will grab a round power window and I will place it over the face. Then I will soften it and I will adjust the size. And this shot is moving quite a lot, so let's track it. And here I want to precisely brighten the face of the model, and it's best to do it by combining the power windows with the qualifier, as this will give us more defined result. So let's go to the qualifier and let's draw over the skin. Now let's turn the highlight mode on to be able to see the selection. And now I will use my sliders to refine the selection. So I will start from the hue, shrinking it a bit. Then let's soften it. Now let's adjust the luminance. And let's soften it. And now I'll also blur my selection and I will denoise it. Okay, let's play it. Looks good to me. And here what we will do is that we'll go to the primary wheels and we'll push the gamma up a bit. Like this. And look at the difference. This is before and after. This way we have basically added more brightness to some selected parts of the skin, making it look more sculpted. And we also very often use power windows to create vignettes. So I will create another node and I will call it vignette. And here I will grab a rectangular power window and I will make it bigger. Then I will turn my highlight mode on. Then I will increase the softness. And then let's reverse our power window as we want to adjust the outside of the mask, not the inside. And let's turn the highlight mode off. And then let's go to curves again. And here I will push my white curve down a bit in the midtones. And this is our before and after. I hope you've learned a lot about power windows. In this lesson, I will show you how to use one of the coolest tools in DaVinci Resolve, Magic Mask. Magic Mask is unfortunately available only for the studio version users, but even if you haven't purchased it yet, I would still recommend you to watch this lesson to see its potential. And this is the clip we'll be working on. This one has been shot with Sony camera and it's in Sony Cine S-Log 3. And here I have only performed a small primary adjustments on the first serial node. This is before and after. So let's go ahead and let's create a new node and let's call it Magic Mask. Now let's go straight to our Magic Mask tool over here. And here we have some options to choose from, depending on what we want to do. So the default setting is set to an object, in case we wanted to track an object, but we can switch it to person. So let's do it. And here also we can choose what part of the body we will be tracking. So we can choose some features like arms, clothing, face, hair, shoes, and so on. But I want to track the whole person, so I will go back to person. Then over here we have some refining tools that we'll be using a bit later. And then here, what I always do, I switch the quality from faster to better to get better results. And then here, when we have our qualifier selected, we can simply draw a stroke over the person. And then here, let's also turn the mask overlay so we can see our selection highlighted in red. And as you can see, the magic mask did actually a very good job with it. So now we can simply hit the track button over here and let's wait. Perfect. And now it depends what you want to do with your mask. But for color grading purposes, I usually only increase blur radius a bit. And then I denoise it, like this. And now I will also turn off the mask overlay. I don't need to see it. And now the first thing we will do is that we'll go here to curves. And I will use my white curve. And I will push it up in the midtones to increase the brightness of the person. And this is before and after. Lovely. We can also use the same mask to modify the background. So let's right click on our magic mask node and let's create the outside node after it. And now when we turn the highlight button on over here, we can see that our mask has been reversed. So let's turn the highlight mode off. And here I will show you how to add some light rays to the background. This clip is very suitable for it as there's a lot of colorful lights in the background we can use. So now let's go to our effects over here and let's search for the light rays. Then let's drop this effect onto the node. And this is how it looks as a default. And then here, for example, we can just increase the length and the brightness of the effect. But now we can see that the light rays cover the person. And with the magic mask, we can easily fix it by selecting alpha limits effect over here. And now our light rays are behind the talent. And let me maybe find a better frame to demonstrate it. Here is fine. So let's modify our light rays a bit more. So I'll decrease the brightness over here. Then I will decrease the softness to the maximum actually. And I will decrease the length to get more subtle effect. But you obviously feel free to play with it as much as you want. And this is before and after. And let's see the final result. In this lesson, we'll focus on log wheels and we'll be working with this Nikon clip. These are my color management settings, so you can copy them. And if you don't have calibrated monitor, change your output color space to Rec 709 Gamma 2.2. And log wheels or logarithmic wheels are designed for more advanced color grading than the primary wheels and offer more precise control over color and luminance. I always use log wheels in combination with the primary wheels. So first I adjust the contrast and the exposure with the primary wheels, and then if I want to, I use log wheels to achieve more defined look. And this is what I will be showing you today. So I will click on my primaries node, and here I will just perform a tiny adjustment, as I can see that my clip already looks great and doesn't need much work. So here I will just push my gamma down, then my lift up, then I will increase the contrast, and I will balance it with the pivot control. And this is before and after. So now let's move to our log wheels. And here we've got our shadows, midtones, and highlights. So let's start from the highlights wheel. And also look what's happening on the waveform on the right, okay? So when I move my highlights wheel, I am affecting only the very brightest parts of the clip. And I can also see it on the waveform. Only that bit is moving up and down. Then the same happens with the shadows. When I move my master wheel, I am affecting only the darkest parts of the clip. And then let's see what happens when we use the midtones wheel. You see, only that part of the waveform moves. So basically log wheels allow us to do more precise, more granular adjustments than the primary wheels. So let's reset it. And as I don't want to change how my background looks at all, I will create a mask on the face of the model to be able to isolate it and to be able to use log wheels only on her. So let's grab the round power window and let's place it nicely over her face, like this. Now let's go to the tracker and let's track it. And now let's go back to our log wheels and let's increase the midtones first. Just a touch, like this, to brighten up the face. Then I will decrease the shadows just a little bit. Remember, usually it's only about a tiny adjustments. We don't want to exaggerate anything. And then I will increase the midtones a bit more. And this is before and after. Look what a huge difference we've made using log wheels. It's a very powerful tool, and I hope you will also have fun with it.